Welcome to the Hunt Backcountry podcast presented by Exo Mountain Gear. This episode is for beginner backpack hunters. And maybe if you have some experience, you'll pick up tips as well. But we really did focus on speaking to people who are new to this idea of backpack hunting and essentially getting away from the truck or the trailhead, spending multiple days at a time, living out of your backpack, pursuing wild animals on their home turf, hopefully being successful, and then bringing home some high quality protein. It is so easy to get overwhelmed in understanding what you need, where you can go, and how to pull off a backpack hunt. And while no one podcast will answer every question, in today's podcast, we speak with my friend Josh Kirchner on what he has learned becoming a backpack hunter, and specifically the advice that he has for new folks. In addition to this podcast discussion, we have a link in the show description that will take you to an article that contains a lot of resources that will further help you in your journey of becoming a backpack hunter. That includes Josh's book that he'll mention, but it mostly includes free resources. Things like gear lists, training plans, nutrition and food guides, and a whole lot more. So check out the link in the show description to dive even deeper and enjoy the journey of becoming a backpack hunter. I hope that this conversation helps you. If you are enjoying the show, it would help us tremendously if you could leave a rating or review in your podcast app. And be sure that you've also hit subscribe or follow in that podcast app to receive future episodes automatically. Let's dive right into this discussion with Josh. All right, Josh, welcome back to the show, man. It's been a while since we've had you on the podcast. I'm sure quite a few listeners know who you are, what you do, maybe seen you many places. I don't know, YouTube, magazines, social media, but some don't know you.
Yeah.
So give an intro.
Yeah, no, stoked to come chat again. It has been a minute. You and I have remained in contact the entire time, but like as far as podcasting goes, I think it's been a couple of years since I've been on. So stoked to chat with you. Yeah, Josh Kirchner. I live down in Arizona and do a whole lot of bow hunting and backpack hunting. I have a blog called Dialed In Hunter. That's kind of how I started making content. Um, that led into writing articles, and then I learned video and stuff after that. So yeah, and then wrote a couple books out on Amazon. Um, and now, yeah, just stoked to chat today, man.
I just looked, man. I think from what I'm seeing on our website, if I search Kirchner, which number one, a lot of articles come up because you've given us a bunch of great articles on our website. So go check that out. But yeah, I think in terms of the podcast, last time we chatted was 2021, which is ridiculous. Episode 308. So I'll leave links to all that in the show description if you guys want to check it out. You mentioned your books. What are the titles?
Yeah, so the first one is Becoming a Backpack Hunter, which is taking you pretty much like from the ground level of you don't even maybe you don't even know if you want a backpack hunt, but you're kind of thinking about it. It takes you from there all the way through everything to packing an animal out back to the vehicle, just everything in between, everything involved. And yeah, just the gear section is giant in there. That was the first book, and then second book is Becoming a Bow Hunter, and that does my approach for that was pretty much the same exact thing, but in regards to bow hunting. So you don't even have a bow yet. I talk about how to find a bow, how to buy a bow, how to get involved in the archery community, everything, gear, bow hunting tactics. Yeah.
I'll leave links to those, like I mentioned, but really it's that I want to say that first book. That's not why we're talking today, but it's very relevant to that first book. You you do videos, like you said, you have your own YouTube channel. Some of those are hunt films, some of them are how-tos, some of them are gear reviews. And I'm personally subscribed. I saw this video pop up And I was like, oh man, Josh was bringing some great points up in this video on how to do your first backpack hunt and how to plan for success. And obviously on our podcast, we've talked about all aspects of backpack hunting and backcountry hunting, whatever. But as I started watching your video, I was just like, man, you're covering basics in a very helpful way that I feel like maybe our podcast audience, if they're only taking our opinion or resources or conversations, like we through the podcast are skipping over some of the basics, or maybe haven't talked about them in a long time. So when I saw your video, I was like, dude, Josh, come on the podcast, tell me, but really tell the audience more about this video and the points you're bringing, because I think it covers just a lot of the basics for people who are either brand new hunters or new to maybe backpack style hunting. So that's just what I want to chat with you about today. That's why we're doing this video. Or sorry, that's why we're doing this podcast was because of that video I saw. And first things first, man, you start talking in this video about where can you actually go? So you brought up some great points in the video. When it comes to I am brand new to this idea of backpack hunting, where can I go? How do you recommend starting to figure that out, Josh?
Yeah, so that was yeah, I talk about this in the video, but like when I was starting out, I literally like I didn't know like there's finding where to go, right? There's like finding like ideas of where to go, but what was on my mind was I didn't even know if like where I was allowed to go. Like I actually called the Forest Service and I was like, "Hey, if I hike into this area here, am I just allowed to sleep wherever I want?" You know what I mean? Like I've that my whole life I've operated out of dispersed campsites, from the truck and stuff like that. So the idea of just putting everything on my back and hiking into a random location of my choice and sleeping there almost sounded wrong. Like I'm like it felt like, am I doing something wrong here? So like I called the Forest Service and they told me they're like, yeah, absolutely. If you're on national forest or wilderness or whatever, like you're absolutely allowed to sleep wherever you end up. So based off of that, I think like most people might not have that question, but I figured, I would just be transparent about the whole thing. Um, I think the best thing to do is to really, whether you're using a mapping software or you're looking at paper maps, whatever, uh, the low-hanging fruit of where to go, though, is wilderness areas. Like these are like the easiest things to recognize on the map in terms of where to go. Wilderness areas, they're roadless, no vehicle access is allowed. So it just like kind of sings the song of backpack hunting, right? So
hmm
I think
And
that's a
just,
great place to go
yeah,
ahead.
just to clarify, like when you say wilderness, you're not just being descriptive, like I'm going out into quote unquote the wilderness, but you're being very specific to talk about capital W wilderness, which is an
Yes.
actual designation of a type of land that's managed a certain way that, as you said, is roadless and non-motorized, not improved by man, that type of thing. And so, yes,
Yes.
capital W actual wilderness areas.
So yeah, actual wilderness areas. These are going to be like your low-hanging fruit of access points to go backpack hunting. And most of them, they have trails into them. So what I started doing was I was like, okay, I'm gonna start putting X's on the map at certain trailheads and stuff, and this is just like really easy spots to recognize on a map. Aside from that, though, the more I started digging around, I started noticing that, oh wow, there's areas besides wilderness areas that are maybe they're only like, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles wide or something like that. But there's a chunk of land that doesn't have any roads going through it, but it's not technically a wilderness area and there's no trails. So I started like circling these areas on maps too when I was starting out. And when it came down to it, my first backpack hunt, that's where it ended up. It ended up in a spot where I just literally parked off the side of the road. There was no trail, and I just hiked cross country to this mesa that I had marked on a map. And I knew there was no roads or trails going through there. And I was like, okay, well, this is, like this is I can go backpack hunting in here. And that's how I went on my very first backpack hunt. So when you're looking for areas, I think, don't be afraid to not to like drift away from wilderness. Wilderness is easy to see. But trails and wilderness areas, like trails are the roads of the backcountry, right? So like they're going to attract people. And while when you're backpack hunting, you're technically like one of the things is you're trying to get away from the crowds, which I think you do. But if you are going to see somebody, most of the time it's going to be on a trail. And lots of people tend to camp will camp close to a trail. And so if you're really trying to beat the crowds and you truly want to be alone, I think honestly the better option is to kind of stay away from a wilderness area and just try to find these like overlooked blocks of roadless country that really don't have a sign on them, right? To say, hey, come here. I think I've had the most success in getting away from people doing that.
Yeah, there's magnets to, like, as you said, low-hanging fruit. A wilderness area is a great thing. More people are doing it, but within a wilderness area, then those trailheads become magnets big time of, hey, here's an actual parking lot. Here's an actual trailhead. And you can definitely just get, I don't want to say more creative, but don't be limited to that. Don't be limited to trails. Little pullouts, little ways to access country where it's like from the get-go, from the road, whether it's a Forest Service road or what have you, like you're straight kind of bushwhacking, and covering country without a trail can be a really good way to go. Just to touch on wilderness, since we mentioned it, the capital W wilderness areas you were talking, I pulled up Onyx, and then you just go to map layers. And then there's kind of two things that are super helpful and somewhat related, but under layers, if you go to land and access, there's a wilderness areas layer. So you just turn that on. It's going to show you all wilderness areas. And then separately, but kind of related, this won't just target wilderness areas, but is helpful to see, is under roads, trails, and rec. There's a roadless areas layer as well. Now, that roadless area isn't just saying, hey, this is wilderness. It's just kind of highlighting with shades and gradients areas that are essentially further away from roads. So those are two things to begin to look at. And as you said, Josh, like outside of capital W wilderness areas, you really have so much in terms of like there's national forest, there's BLM, which is federal. Then you have state lands, and of course, everything is going to vary by state. But I bring all that up to say, in something like Onyx, you look at any sort of public land, click on it, it's going to tell you what type of public land that is, and essentially who it's kind of managed by. And I just always recommend like don't be afraid to pick up the phone and actually ask questions. Like go straight to the source and say, okay, I'm browsing in Google Earth, Onyx, whatever. This spot looks intriguing. Who manages this spot? Like what type of entity, even if it's public land, what entity is managing this? Find that management office, essentially, call them and start asking questions of, like you said, can I just camp wherever? Can I park wherever? Are these roads open or not? Are they seasonal or not? Yeah, I mean, I just always recommend go straight to the source to try and get information on stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how I did. Like the first time I ever went out of state for a backpack hunt, I remember um, calling the state of Colorado and asking them like all the things that you just said. And you know, some folks might think that they're being a pain in the butt by doing that, but honestly, like these folks want to help you. They really do. Like of course they're not going to say the elk are in this basin. They're not going to do that, but like in terms of like getting you out there, they're more than happy to be like, hey, like the lady that I talked to before I went on my first out of state hunt, she was like, "Oh, don't go this way. You want to go this way because the road is trash if you go this way." So like that right there, that little thing saved me probably a couple hours of travel,
Hmm.
because I picked up the phone and called, And then another valuable thing I think to be able to ask these people is stuff like, and especially in arid places like Arizona, New Mexico, um, water is always an issue. Um, Finding water to filter and calling the Forest Service and asking them about certain, labeled water sources. If they don't have the answer themselves, they can usually find somebody that knows. So just another trick in the back pocket of trying to, plan the best trip you can.
Anything else under where can I go that you think would be good to discuss, or should we move on?
Um, no, I think that was about it, man. Unless you can think of anything.
No, I mean, we could talk for hours, but it becomes more of like I just want, again, especially people new to this, understanding where they can go, not from a, hey, where do I find elk? Where do I find a mule deer? Where, whatever, but where legally can I be looking? Can I be going? And especially in this context, can I be backpack hunting? So I think gives people the information they need to know to then go go figure that out for sure. You mentioned physical capability. There, I don't know, Josh. There's so much like hype around
Yeah.
the physical aspect of hunting that gets annoying to me. But you can't escape the fact that, especially for backpack hunting, you are creating capability with yourself, like your own 2 feet, what you can carry, where you can go. That is the limitation. Like that is what you can do, not only to get into country, but then to get an animal if you're successful out of the country. So physical capability, despite the hype, is really important. At least having a base of physical capability. And if you don't, like
Yeah,
it is a limitation.
yeah, 100%. I've seen more times than I can count. I mean, sadly, of folks that maybe didn't care as much as they should have. And they absolutely paid the price, man. Like I've seen like guys pack into camp and then they won't even leave the camp because they're just thrashed. It's like so it's like getting into camp and getting out of camp and getting an animal out, that's like one thing, but also like you also need to make sure that once you go through, the act of actually packing in and stuff like that, that you have the go to go hunting.
Hmm.
I think, like that, I think that flies under the radar with everything. But like, and you don't, I mean, what's that saying, Mark? Like, there's no such thing as being in too good a shape, right? So
Yeah.
go nuts if you want, right? But like thinking about it, like realistically, man, I think if you took like 3 days a week, and did like some weighted pack hikes, um, and some basic strength and endurance type training, I think you're going to be okay. Now, I say okay. There's a difference between okay and thriving, right? So if you can do more, here's the thing: the more that you can do, the better you're going to feel. You know, um, you want to be able to pack in, wake up, and not feel like you can't move a muscle the next day because you're so sore from what you just did. So if you try to do that stuff ahead of time and acclimate your body to what you're trying to ask of it, and I mean like you've seen me, Mark, like sometimes I'll put 80 pounds in my backpack and just walk around my neighborhood,
Hmm.
like doing things like that, like on and off, like that's gonna go a really long way. And it can essentially make you, where's that's that other saying, like act like you've been there. Well, if you don't know what it's like to carry 100 pounds or 80 pounds in your backpack, um, doing it in the mountains is gonna like rock your world, right? So yeah, you don't have to be a physical fitness nut, but I think the main thing is you just have to care about
Yeah.
it, and the better you're gonna feel.
Another point on that, and I think this is especially true for people getting started, is pace yourself. Like everybody's excited to get out there. Guys who are maybe new to this are extra eager or extra nervous, extra anxious, and you're just like, all right, I finally got here, been thinking about this hunt, this trip, this experience for months. I have been training, and their boots hit the ground and they take off like a bat out of hell. And essentially, like you said, maybe they go super hard day one, maybe they're feeling good,
Yeah,
but then they've actually gone too hard too soon. And now this option to continue to hunt hard for 5 days becomes really, really difficult, daunting, or impossible. So,
yeah.
as excited as you are, pace yourself. I mean, even me, who, taken a fair amount of trips in the mountains at this point, every first climb sucks terribly. And every time I have to remind myself to kind of like pace myself and play the long game if I know, like, hey, this is a 5 day hunt or this is a 7 day hunt. My goal is always to not get up the mountain as quick as possible or not get into the backcountry as quick as possible. My goal is always to be able to hunt as hard on day 5, 6, 7, or, some of my hunts day 10 plus as it is on day one. Um, and so that's just something to keep in mind as well.
My buddy Eric, he taught me a valuable lesson out there, and because I dude that I was when I first started, I was a put my nose to the ground, just go. Like that's kind of just kind of person I am. Him though, my buddy Eric is like, dude, let's take a break, you know? Like, and I was like, okay, and like I'm feeling like anxious, I'm like, oh, let's keep going, let's keep going. But like the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, there's nothing wrong with this, taking like a 5-10 minute break, grab some food, and keep going. Like that 5-10 minutes, man, that can really rejuvenate you, man. And I didn't realize how much little breaks like that could help, because I was always
Yeah.
like point A to point B, like I'm just gonna grind it out, go from point A to point B. But if I went from point A to, maybe I take a break halfway in between, grab a bar or something like that, drink some water, I'm not going to feel the grind isn't going to be as grindy, like as I get to point B. So yeah, don't, I mean, longer hikes that I have now, I'll actually like pre-plan, okay, when I get to this point, I'm going to drop my pack and eat lunch or something,
Yeah.
you know? And I think there's a lot of value in that. Take your time. The mountains are slow. You gotta slow down.
hmm I think in the video you may have mentioned gear next, but I actually want to jump to food and we can come back to gear. In part because I think food directly relates to what we just talked about in terms of performance. And
Yep.
it may, again, just like going hard may not matter if you're out there for a day. I don't think your food really matters if you're out there for a day or even two or maybe three. But
Hmm.
when you start getting into 3, 4, 5 days plus, and you either have too much food, too little food, not the right type of food, this directly relates to, hey, am I hunting hard? Am I feeling good? Am I capable on day 5 plus as I am on day one? Part of that is the training, like we talked about. Part of that, honestly, is food choices for a bunch of reasons. One is food's gonna be the heaviest thing in your pack on a long hunt, and it's easy to carry too much food, which maybe you're carrying dead weight, it's slowing you down,
Yep.
or you don't have enough food, or maybe you have food, but you find out by day 3 plus, this food is not something I want, not something I can eat. And even though I have it, I'm not eating enough because I don't have the right thing that works for me on a backpack hunt. So I think food is absolutely critical for a bunch of reasons. But what have you learned and seen and would give as advice to people who are new to this on food?
Yeah, so I think the biggest question around food is what you've been talking about. It's like, how much do I need? Right? And I say this in the video, but like if I were to ask most people, be like, how much food do you need in a day? They probably wouldn't be able to accurately answer me, which is a really important question when it comes to backpack hunting. And I think the fear of being hungry can lead to people overpacking food. Um, then there's the opposite side of things. I've run into some individuals that are way too minimalist because they're either worried about the weight or, I don't know, name your reason, and they don't bring enough food or they only bring like one type of food. Like, dude, I'm not joking. I met this dude in January. Okay. Really nice guy. First backpack hunt. He brought like 60 Tootsie Rolls or something like that. Like that was his main, like he had just like a giant thing of Tootsie Rolls and he had some peak refuels with him, and
Really?
I'm like, oh, to be young, like, like I remember when I was younger and eating 8 Jack in the Box tacos didn't sound like a bad idea. Okay, now it's a horrible idea. Okay, but um, and then another good friend of mine came out with me. You mentioned maybe it might not matter a day or two. Well, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you because I had a friend come out with me that just brought. He's like, "Oh, I don't eat that much. I don't eat that much in a day." I'm like, "Okay, well, you know your body." Well, he just brought like chocolate covered or yogurt covered raisins or something like that, and like maybe another bag of nuts. He ended up throwing up at the end of the day.
Dang.
That was just being out for a day, So like calorie intake is important, and you really need to like the food that you're bringing with you so you are more inclined to eat it, right? So
Right.
on that note, there's a lot of different, all of us are familiar with these, right? There's a lot of different like quote unquote like backpack hunting friendly foods or backpacking foods, okay? Like all the bars and stuff like that. Those are all great, but like there is absolutely nothing wrong with bringing something that isn't backpack friendly or whatever, like I don't know, like a Snickers bar, or if you like bringing like I'll like dehydrate fruit at my house, or I bring like tuna with me. You don't have to buy something that was made for the trail, right? Like just have calories that you're going to want to eat because I promise you, you're going to need them. And the way that I personally found out how many calories I needed in a day was I would just plan these like day trips and I would intentionally bring a little too much food with me because I didn't know how much I needed. And I just simply kept a kind of a diary, like a log of the food that I would eat throughout the day. Was I hungry? How much of the food did I eat? Did I feel overstuffed? Did I eat too much? And after doing that a few times, I kind of came up with a number, which at the time was around 2,500 calories. Okay. That worked for me for a bit until I started doing longer duration, longer pack in type backpack hunts. Then it wasn't enough. And I was bumming food off of a friend. Nowadays, the number that I sit around is around 3,500 calories. And with that number, some days I don't eat everything. Some days I eat everything, but never am I hungry. And I think that that's like a good place to land, right? Like, if you're not hungry, you're feeling better, right? And you're just going to be more inclined to have the energy, to actually like do the things that you need to do out there when it comes to hunting, backcountry chores, all of that.
Yep. Yeah, And I will add some resources and links. Like I know Kyle, Valley to Peak
Mhm.
Nutrition has great resources, including some he's given us through EXO and through the podcast. We'll leave links to all that. And then what you said on, hey, this many calories was enough, except this type of trip it wasn't, is
Yep.
another. It's getting into nuance, but still matters because there's a difference between, say, early high country mule deer. You have a lot of effort to get in country, but then maybe you're putting your butt down and just eyes bleeding behind glass for days, not actually moving very much. Your
Right.
calorie demands on those days aren't going to be as high as a totally different type of hunt. Say, oh man, I plotted this big course, this big loop. I'm gonna go like bugle call, move, just chase elk, cover ground. That's a totally different hunt, and the
Yep.
calorie demands are going to be different for that. And as you said, like sometimes those calorie demands are pretty drastically different, 2,500 calories to 3,500 calories or more.
Yep.
But yeah, figure that out. And I love what you said there. This is true of nutrition, but so many other things is take notes and take notes while you're in the field. Don't assume you're going to remember things 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months later. So in the moment, as you learn a lesson or realize something, whether it's about food, nutrition, training, gear, habitat, animal behavior, doesn't matter. Take those notes in the field so that you can reference them later because you're not going to remember them, at least not all of them. So yeah, any of those thoughts, like jot those notes down for sure.
Yeah, 100%, dude. We got these smartphones with us. Like it's always there, right? Like jot down little things you learn here and there because unless you I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like sometimes I can't remember what I ate for breakfast on the same day.
Yeah,
But it's just gonna be something nice to be able to refer back to, especially, if you're like you do like one big backpack hunt a year, man, you're gonna forget a lot in the next year. So having that to be able to refer back to when you're building your food bags, or when it comes to, oh, you know what? I saw more does on this side of the mountain than I saw bucks. Just stuff like that, little things that are just gonna lead more to a more fulfilling hunt.
absolutely. Here's a perfect example of a basic thing that you mentioned in your video that I'm just like, well, of course. But then I also realized, oh no, wait, not everybody knows this or does this. Take your food and organize it into daily bags, meaning
Yep.
5 day trip, you got 5 days worth of food, you have 5 bags. Each bag is going to have that calorie goal, that calorie limit. It makes it easier to organize, it makes it easier to pack, it makes it easier to track what you have eaten, or, if you've eaten too much, too little, that type of, like, there's 100 reasons to do this, Josh, but put your food
Yep.
in daily bags.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Like we make at our house. Um, I mean, the whole family gets involved for me. My daughter and wife help build my food bags before I leave. And basically, what we do is we just make rows of food. Each row on the floor is a day. And we go through and we put all the breakfasts down, and then we put all the snacks down, and we put all the lunches down. And by the end of it, you have this like, these like 5 to 8 columns, however many days you're going out, and then we just put them in gallon Ziploc bags, and try to, suck as much air as we can out of it, to decrease the bulk of the food bag, and that's how you load them in the pack, man. And I think it's just great. It's like it makes it easy in the morning when you get up in the morning in the backcountry, get out of your tent, you just go into your food, grab a bag, you're done. Like there's no like, oh, what do I want to eat today? Blah blah blah. My camera guy Dylan, the guy drives me crazy. He brings a giant bag of food and he doesn't organize any of it, and he just like reaches in there for random things, and I just like have anxiety as I'm like watching him organize his food every single morning. It's like, dude, just put it in a bag, man. Like
Yeah.
put them in bags.
Oh, that's funny, man. All right, so you're not prepped for this. I don't think you covered it in your video. At least I don't remember. But give me
Mm.
like, I don't care, your favorite 3 to 5 things. And again, food's personal, but like, what are those 3 to 5 things that are go-tos for you?
I really love um tuna and crackers.
Okay.
Like that has been like a tuna packet with Ritz crackers. Like that has been my go-to lunch for a few years now. I used to be a bagel guy. And there's still some magic to bagels, Mark, but the tuna thing, I don't know, man, like especially after a morning of hunting, like getting that like protein, that like actual protein that's not at a in a bar.
Yeah.
Um, I just love that. It just goes down so well. And then stuff like I really dig honey stingers. I really love like almond butter packets and putting that on a honey stinger. That's just like that just hits right every single time for me.
Yep.
Um, Let me see here. Oh, and then like um dehydrated mangoes.
Mm.
I really, really like dehydrated mangoes.
Good stuff, man.
Yep.
All right, we hit food. Touch on water. You mentioned earlier, obviously, water is
Hmm.
finding water is important. You're coming from an Arizona context, even more important than maybe other people in different, parts of the Rockies
Yep.
and where they're hunting. But not only
Yep.
finding, sourcing water, more so the importance of water, consistency of intake, and then I think you mentioned this, and I know it's true for me, adding things to water that actually make you want to drink more at times, because otherwise, 5 days of straight water just gets old out there.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah. So when it comes to finding water, if you're hunting in like an arid place, a couple things that I do on the regular to kind of try to proof water, which is absolutely necessary in my opinion. You can only put so much trust in what a map tells you. Um, but I'll start marking Mark Springs on Onyx or whatever. Another thing I like doing is I'll use the satellite imagery to zoom in on the bottoms of canyons. And oftentimes in arid places, these are usually more open areas. So it's not like super dark timber or anything like that. So you should have the visibility from the satellite. You can usually see like water pooled up in the bottoms of these canyons. And if I switch over to something, Google Earth, then you can use the timeline feature there, and you can go to what I would do is like go to somewhere around June, okay? And if that water is still there on the imagery around the month of June, that's probably a pretty reliable water source because at that point you're at a time of year where it's like the driest and the hottest. So that's kind of what I like to do in terms of like trying to find water. Another thing you can do is go on, you can go on like backpacking forums and stuff like that. And a lot of times they'll have like spring reports of like, oh, this spring is flowing heavy, around this time during the year, and some of them are quite recent. Like you can oftentimes find them for the month that you're trying to go in. Um, I think that's useful too for if you're using trails, you can use those sites and they can kind of tell you trail status and like it just at the end of the day, like I try to like know like having memorized where I'm going before I even step foot in there. So you can kind of like you already kind of know your route and stuff like that. Okay, this water here is usually dry in October, blah blah blah, all that. The more info, the better. When it comes to actually like drinking water, um, I think so. I was a roofer for 15 years in my life, and I really got used to not drinking water. And it's just you get into like work mode, and it's you just forget. And even when it's hot out. Well, I took that same logic into backpack hunting, and I would oftentimes get dehydrated, and sometimes I'd end up cramping up, getting dizzy, stuff like that. So now, what I really try to do, there's some trails I go on where I have like certain spots that I know I'm gonna drink water when I get to here. You know, so. And maybe part of this, my thinking around it is I'm always like afraid of running out of water. So like maybe I was not drinking water because of that. But in places that have more water, people don't think like that. Here in Arizona, there's sometimes where I'm hiking in a spot and I don't know if there's going to be water there. Um, so yeah, drinking water, super important, man. Like I should probably drink more, but I usually end up around a liter a day. That's kind of my average. If
A
I'm just like
liter a day? Is that what you said?
yeah,
On a
yeah,
backpack?
that's just kind of on a backpack hunt. Yep.
Dude, you're a
That's kind
freaking
of
animal.
that's kind of just I don't try to do that. Like sometimes it's three, dude. It just
Yeah.
depends on what I'm doing. Like I've run out of water. I usually carry a 3 liter water bladder, no matter what backpack hunt I'm going on. And at the end of the day, I usually, I'm like refilling my water for the next day, and it usually ends up to be, oh wow, I drank about a liter of water. Like
Wow.
that's just what it ends up being. So sometimes that doesn't include cooking though, because what I'll also do is like I'll carry like a Nalgene with me
Right.
with water in it, and I'll use that for cooking, and then also to get to what you're talking about with like drinking something else other than water, like putting something in your water, I'll throw like a um electrolyte mix or something like that in the Nalgene and drink that down. So maybe it's more like two if you include the Nalgene.
Yeah.
Um so but I think the electrolyte thing, I think that's crucial, man. Like one, you need electrolytes, but also gosh, dude, for me, it just is nice. Like at the end of the day, you're eating dinner. It's nice to sit back and just drink something a little different than water. Because water, like the more days that go on, it's like it's like it just loses its taste. Like
Hmm.
you almost have to remember, oh, I should do this, right? I should drink water because it's like you don't want to because it's like wow, it's like it's kind of it gets boring, right? But yeah, you need to do it or you're gonna bonk.
Yeah. Yeah, and on everybody thinks of water, especially on these early hunts, these hotter hunts, it's as equally important in the cold to both to one, stay hydrated, to often have to be more intentional because you don't feel yourself as hot or as sweaty, but that water's still important. And then even just from a practical benefit and a morale benefit on cold hunts, like similar idea of electrolytes, having something to break it up is having something warm, whether that's coffee, tea, cider, bone broth. Like there's a million options to have a warm drink on a cold hunt, and the difference that that can make is it's it's pretty profound. It really is.
Oh, dude, it is I think the morale thing is the biggest. Like, dude, having like a nice hot cup of cider or something like that, or cocoa or whatever at the end of the day before bed. Oh my goodness. Like
Yeah.
I get a smile on my face, man. It just makes me feel warm and fuzzy, man.
All right, let's get into a little bit on gear. Of course, we're only going to cover things from a high level. Again, we're trying to focus on absolute basics, beginners, common misconceptions, common mistakes, etc.
Mhm.
I think to do that, we just need to kind of at first talk about like what's important, what's not, or like what do you see most from beginners as questions or as mistakes? Like where do you go with gear? Because it's easy to get into the weeds, into the details, super technical. But for this beginner conversation, where do you start, Josh?
So gear is super fun, and I think it's like one of the most exciting things about, starting out backpack hunting is like, oh man, like I want to learn everything about all the gear and stuff like that, which that's awesome. That's great. It's really, really easy to spend $10,000 though on all of the gear that you quote unquote need. And that's just I don't know, man. If you're starting out, here's something to think about. If you're starting out, you've never been backpack hunting, honestly, you might not even like it. Like just being honest. Like I have a friend that did a couple backpack hunts with me. He just doesn't do them anymore. It's just not his thing, and that's fine. But had that dude went out and spent like 8, 10 grand on all this high-end stuff, what a waste of money. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're starting out backpacking, I think the two areas that you really need to pay the most attention to and not skimp on is the boots and the backpack. Those are the two things that I personally think and have witnessed end hunts. Like if one is in, if it is just not working right, like I've walked the sole off of a boot before and had to like tie it back on with my bootlace. Like that, I couldn't hunt anymore after that, man. Like I was like hobbling around like a pirate. Okay, so pay attention to the boots. Don't skimp on boots. Do your research. If it comes, it's hard to not get in the weeds here, but like everyone's feet is a little bit different. You know what I mean? There's full leather boots. There's more synthetic type boots. Pick your poison. The most important thing about boots though is to try them on before you actually go backpack hunting. Um, and I would highly recommend putting in an aftermarket insole. Most higher end boots, for whatever reason, they put this crap insole in the boot. All right. And it really doesn't do you any favors. So just I would plan on buying a boot and buying an aftermarket insole to go in there, because that's just going to make the boot perform that much better. And actually get out there, whether it's, hiking a local trail, walking around your neighborhood, getting on the stair stepper, whatever it is. Okay. Wear those boots. Okay, because it doesn't matter what all the forums say, if that this boot is the bee's knees, it might be awful for you. And you do not want to find that out when you're out on your hunt. Okay, because like when you have like a nasty blister or something like that, or a hot spot, like each step sucks. Okay. And you have a lot of steps in front of you on the front end of a backpack hunt, right? You want to be able to have the go to go through with your hunt. So do your research on boots and be prepared to, you don't have to buy the highest end stuff out there, but I definitely would not buy the cheapest. And then on the backpack front, um, the first big game animal I ever killed, I did not have a good backpack, and I ended up having to drag it. It was a mountain lion. I had to drag that mountain lion 3 miles because my backpack couldn't handle carrying it out. Once I did get a backpack with a frame in it, I was a young broke kid, right? Got what I could get. And it was a tough backpack, but every single time I'd put that backpack on, my hips would flare up. It didn't matter if there was 20 pounds in it or 60. Like I would leave the truck, no, there's that feeling again, you know? These little things like that, day after day, really can wear on you. Okay. So I think, it's important. You need to get a backpack that has an adjustable torso length, and an adequate suspension system that all works together, because there's some backpacks out there that they don't. Like it might have a suspension system, but it isn't technically working together, just because of the style in which it was built. But yeah, so don't skimp on the backpack, don't skimp on the boots, and then actually, on the backpack side of things, like, it's one thing to spend X amount of dollars on a good backpack, but you need to actually learn how to put it on too. If you don't know how to put it on, it's not going to perform right. Okay, so learn how to put it on, learn how to size it, get it sized to you. You guys, I know you guys, if someone calls you up and they want questions about how to size a backpack, you're gonna help them out, you know. Take the steps to do that, because the backpack is going to perform exceptionally better if you need to set it up for success is what it is.
That's a great place to start. That's the two things we talk about all the time, which I don't know if people think we're saying that selfishly because we sell packs. We're not. We just are saying, hey, your boots and your pack, if you're a backpack hunter, it all starts and ends there. Those are the two things you have to get dialed.
Yep.
From there with gear, what I think is really helpful is to just separate, and I think you touched on this in the video, like backpacking from hunting. Because a lot of guys coming into this, unless they're a brand new hunter, they're going to have a lot of hunting gear. So you don't need to necessarily change your weapon or knife or things like that. Like now we can just talk about, okay, this is not just a hunt, it's a backpack hunt. Therefore, what do I need to backpack? And then you can just look at, okay, well, I'm going to need a shelter. I'm going to need some sort of
Hmm.
like sleep system. Generally going to need a stove to heat up water, cook food, etc. Basics like a water filter, that type of thing. So I think if you just take this approach of instead of looking at everything as a whole, think of what do I already have, maybe as a hunter, or maybe we already have someone who's a backpacker and not a hunter. It would be the inverse, but just kind of separate those categories and begin to look at what do I need? Is it these hunting items or is it these backpacking items?
Yeah, and I think that's like easy for kind of folks to get a little bit confused about is like I mean, the fact of the matter is we're backpacking with a weapon. That's what backpack hunting is.
Hmm.
So especially when you're first starting out, like, dude, there's nothing wrong with going on these like backpacking forums, these, classifieds and stuff like that, and getting like, you can get like a used shelter and or a used sleeping pad or whatever, and try to save some money here and there. But at the end of the day, you just need backpacking gear. It doesn't necessarily like I love, don't get me wrong, man. I love supporting hunting companies, but if that's not in the cards for you, don't feel bad about it. Get the stuff that's going to get you in the field. Okay. And then you can build upon it there. My first tent ever, okay, was a 7 pound backpacking tent. All right. Like it didn't fit in the pack. I had to put it on the outside of the backpack, and I couldn't wait for the day that I got something more lightweight and packable. But man, I spent a lot of nights in that tent. I took it out of state with me all over Arizona too. And it got me into the field, so get the stuff that's going to allow you to do that, because at the end of the day, like, that's the important part. If you just like sit around and like try to like save up thousands of dollars so you can get like the best sleeping pad and the bag and the tent that everyone on YouTube is recommending, okay, then dude, you're going to be in the field later than sooner,
Hmm.
so I think that's a great point, man. And like, don't the other thing is like, don't feel like you need to get the most lightweight thing, because lightweight costs money, right? Like, so all of this at the end of the day, it comes down to budget, right? If you've got the budget to get the best stuff out there, then go ahead. But you know what? When I started doing this, I was a broke kid, and I was like trying to, how do I make this work? And I think especially at the early stages, like I was saying, like when you're learning, you're starting out backpack hunting, you really don't even know if you're going to like it, So I think it's important, get some stuff. Don't skimp on the boots in the backpack. Because here's the other thing: the boots in the backpack are applicable outside of backpack hunting.
Hmm.
So even if you end up not liking backpack hunting, you're still going to use that stuff when you're just going on day trips. But the other stuff, your sleep system and everything like that, man, like, you don't have to like totally cheap out, but don't think that you need to spend 5 grand on everything. Like, get some solid stuff, and get out there and be like, you know what? I didn't really like this sleeping pad, and upgrade. That, I think that's a better approach instead of just going all in
Yeah.
on gear, personally. So
Yeah, I think like do the bare minimum to get out there, to do the thing, to get experience.
yeah.
To one, as you said, like make sure this is something you're going to stick with.
Hmm.
But two, you may find that, hey, I picked up this cheap budget, used whatever, and in my head, I thought it was just an option to get me out there, but I don't have any complaints about it. So I'm gonna stick with it. On
Right.
the other hand, you're also going to figure out, hey, I'm going to go do this thing, make sure I'm going to continue to do this thing. And then I can very practically look and go, hey, what was the worst gear that I used? Like, what was the thing that drove me nuts the most, that made me
Yeah.
the most uncomfortable, whether it was during the day, like clothing, or whether it was at night for sleeping. And then from there, like set actual priorities on where you spend your money. Because we all have a limited amount of money to spend. Of course,
Hmm.
we want the nicest everything. It's not practical. It's not going to happen. So one, just get started. And then two, use your own personal experience to determine what of my gear drives me nuts and what do I want to prioritize. And man, when I was doing this and getting started, it was like one thing a year where
Yep.
it was just like, okay, I'm gonna commit to buying a new or quote unquote the closer to the best. Like look at it as an investment of if I have to spend money and I'm gonna stick with this and I want something that lasts, I'm gonna take my time, do some research, figure out what I want, and buy that thing. It may only be one thing a year, but then you turn around and a few years later, you're gaining more experience, you know more, you have better gear, and then you just honestly get to this point where it's like, man, my kid's dialed. Now just do the thing and kind of forget about gear a little bit.
Yeah, I think the areas to regardless of the person, I think the areas to invest in after you do boots and backpack like because dude I was like you man like one thing a year that's how it was for me when I first started um but I think the areas what you're ultimately your goal with gear I feel like is always what is more lightweight and what is more packable, right? Because the more space you have in your backpack the more days you're going to be able to stay outside, right? Because then you have more room for food because food is a variable, the other stuff is absolute. So the areas where you're going to save the most weight and space are your shelter, your sleep, and your sleeping bag. Also clothing, but there's a lot of different moving pieces with clothing because some of that you're wearing and stuff.
Hmm.
So tent and sleeping bag, man, I think those are the most important things to be like, okay, you know what? Next year I want to get my kit more lightweight. I want more space in my pack. I would look at one of those if you're just starting out. You can make up a lot of difference between those two things. There's a big difference between like my first I remember my first sleeping bag, it was a synthetic and it was like I think it was like 5 pounds. Okay. And I had it in a compression sack because that's the only way I was putting that in the backpack.
And you probably still froze. It was probably a crappy, heavy, bulky
Oh,
synthetic bag.
dude, I froze. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
like I obviously I stayed alive, but I froze in that thing. Okay. So, and you know what, man? There's nothing wrong with freezing every now and then. It builds character.
Feel
But
alive.
like, yeah. But so on that point, not only like you're gonna be a more lightweight system with more space in your backpack, but also there's an element of comfort there and an element of rest, right? Like sleep is important, and if you're not sleeping well out there, man, you're not going to have the gas to keep going day after day after day. Okay, so like invest. Well, I guess what it really all comes down to, Mark, is invest in your sleep, right?
Hmm.
Like invest in your sleep. And there's a giant difference between like a big synthetic bag and like an 800 or 900 filled down bag. Those big difference between those in terms of packability and weight. So I'm actually like it's either going to come out today or in the next few days. I actually just did a video on like how to pick a sleeping bag and like all the different things that kind of go into that. But I think that is a fantastic one of the first places to start. And then your shelter, like I think there's a little bit more wiggle room with shelters, right? Like, because you can either go the route of like, oh, I'm going to go floorless, which is technically more lightweight and less because you have less material. But if you live in a place like I do, again, you need to invest in your rest. If I go floorless here, especially during the warmer months, I'm probably not going to sleep a whole lot because we have all sorts of stuff crawling around. So, I remember I was supposed to do a hunt with Kyle Camp,
Yeah.
and I went floorless, and it was like really, really warm weather in Idaho in October. And I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be normal Idaho October weather. Well, it was super warm. I ended up with like there was spiders everywhere. in that tent, crawling on my face in the middle of the night, like all over my bag. And I didn't get a wink of sleep really that night because of that. But so had I brought like a floor with me, I probably would have slept like a baby, you know? So, everyone's a little bit different, but I've heard a lot of horror stories about mice terrorizing people,
Yeah.
in the middle of the night. So, like, I think it depends on where you're going to and the individual. But, like, those are all just things to look at, like going the most lightweight isn't always maybe the greatest decision because you also have to look at your comfort level.
Yeah, I like the breaking that up into, and this theme keeps coming up, whether we're talking about training, nutrition, or then in this context, gear. Like ultimately on a backpack hunt, multiple days, your number one greatest chance of success is to spend that time in the field and
Right.
actually be hunting. What is going to keep you out there are, yes, things like potentially your training and covering ground or your nutrition to fuel this activity, but your comfort level, not that you should expect to be comfortable this whole time,
Right.
don't,
Right.
but your comfort level of, okay, I'm getting some decent sleep or I'm not completely freezing this entire time. Those are the things that's going to allow you to actually say, hey, I was planning on going on this 6 day hunt and I'm actually going to stay out here for all 6 days and do this thing rather
Hmm.
than get in there on day two, three and go, God, this is miserable. I haven't slept. I'm freezing. I can't keep doing this. I'm going home.
Yeah.
And that is going to be what is going to change your odds of success. So if we want to talk about how to be more effective, more capable, more successful, nothing, you cannot shortcut time in the field. And so things that enable you to stay out in the field are things that inherently make you more successful. So on surface, does a sleeping pad that you found works well for you help you kill an animal? Everyone wants to say no on the surface, but I would say absolutely yes, it does.
Yep. Yep.
100%.
Yeah, and so does, what we didn't mention, but like, dude, a layering system is also really important. Like, because it's one thing being warm and comfortable to sleep. It's entirely another thing to be comfortable as well, like we said, as comfortable as you can be while you're hunting, while
Hmm.
you're outside of your tent. Should Mother Nature come and rain down upon you, you want to be able to have a system that allows you to stay in the field, that you have confidence in. You have like your insulation layers, which is a set essentially like your mobile sleeping bag, right? And like moisture wicking base layers and rain gear, all of that, like all of that really does matter and it all works together. um and I didn't really realize that, because when I first started hunting, man, it was a cotton long john flannel type of situation, and I remember when it got cold, I'd have, I don't know how many layers on, so much bulk, hard to bend over, which is not applicable. It's just not, that is not a practical approach for backpack hunting. So, I think investing in a layering system, and you don't need to buy all from the same company. Like the basics of the layering system, like base layers, base layer, mid layer, insulation, rain gear. That is like a basic layering system. Who you buy that stuff from, totally up to you. Okay. Like, go just like, I would strongly suggest that you go through with trying to do that though, and try to build yourself a kit that is going to, be versatile in the field, and be able to handle what you're walking into.
All right, let's wrap up with this, which is unfortunately, I think, overlooked and underutilized. It's easy to listen to podcasts about this stuff, easy to do research, somewhat easy to spend some money. Actually do it. Not just do it on the hunt, but do it before the hunt. So you have all this great research, new knowledge, fancy gear. Hopefully, the first time you're not trying to have this experience is on a hunt that you've waited for for a long time and you're just like, oh yeah, let me hike in the mountains and try and set up a tent and try and make a meal and try and find water and try and filter water and try and all the stuff. Try it beforehand. So Josh,
Yep.
you got to do the thing, and that starts before the hunt itself.
100%. I remember filtering water out of my sink, so I knew how to use my water filter, like um fiddling with stuff in the backcountry, um not always the greatest thing, especially like, if like a storm is coming or something, or you're in a storm, like, you want to be able to operate your gear seamlessly, um, and know how to do the thing, right? Same thing with tents. The amount of tents I've set up in my backyard, I have no idea. I really don't. But that is the testing ground. It is my backyard. I set up a tent. I've even slept in the backyard in tents with my family and stuff. And it's all good and fun, like, having family time. But ultimately, I'm testing gear. You know, like, so. Cooking using your stove, you know what I mean? Like some stoves, it's like very, very unlikely that this is gonna happen. Sometimes you buy a lemon though, and it doesn't work. Doesn't output the fuel. Okay, finding that out in the backcountry, not a great place to find that out. So I would learn how to use the stove as well. And you know, the thing that I did that I talked about in the video was I loaded up my backpack. Okay, because that's the other thing. How do you load a pack? Okay, like if you're doing this for the first time when you're about to leave, I don't think you're necessarily setting yourself up for success. Okay. So I would load up my pack, put it in the truck, drive to a campground with my like right with the truck and unload my gear right at the truck and camp with all the stuff that I had with me that I would have going on a backpack hunt. And doing that allowed me to really go through the paces of how, like, actually using all of this stuff. Because the only difference between that and backpack hunting is the truck isn't there. That's the only difference. Everything is used the same exact way. Okay, so like I found that very helpful for me when I before I ever went on my first backpack hunt, and when I did actually go on my first backpack hunt, I walked into the field and there was no fiddling. I got to camp, set up my stuff, and I knew how to work everything. And I had confidence that it was going to work. Okay. Um, like with sleeping bags and stuff like that, I think like something to do um, is actually try to test it out. You can't always do this, but like look at the temperature outside. I do this with clothing a lot. Is like I'll be like, oh yeah, it's 32 degrees outside. Let me see how this jacket works in 32 degrees. Because then all of this knowledge of knowing, oh, my sleeping bag can handle this temperature, all of this knowledge at the end of the day is going to help you pack your backpack more efficiently because it's very easy to just, you know what? I'm going to bring a 0 degree bag with me, the more heavy, bulky option, because I'm not quite sure, how my other bag can handle temperature, right? So I'm just going to overpack. It's easy to overpack. But if you actually know what your gear is capable of, like setting like dude, another thing, I've set my like tents up in the backyard and just sprayed them with a hose and gotten in the inside and just let it go to see like if it leaked or not. Like all of these things, like finding out your tent leaks in the backcountry is not fun. I have done that. Okay. Like, and it is not fun sitting there trying to go to sleep with water dripping on your head. So, do all these things beforehand, and you're just gonna. I really, really think you're just gonna set yourself up for success. Completely aside from shooting an animal.
Love it. So do a test run. As you said before, when it comes time to doing the hunt, one of the biggest dangers is bringing too much. Another danger is trying to do too much. And I think this boils down to these grand ideas. I see it all of the time. I got an email actually from like a guy who was looking at Exopack yesterday. Not trying to throw him under the bus. I'm just saying this is very common to get a message like this. He says, "Hey, I'm looking for a pack for my first backpack hunt, a 7 to 8 day hunt." And I see
Oof.
that and I'm like, man, like if you're truly talking about going out there for 7 days, 7+ days at a time on your first backpack hunt, you're either going to be a complete badass or you're not going to make it, one of the two. And I'm
Right.
I'm not saying that to be like rude. I'm just saying there's you it's a little bit of a crawl, walk, run type thing. And saying you're going to go for 7+ days your first time is more in the run category than it is the crawl or the walk category. So I think too long in terms of time and then too far in terms of distance, especially when you have never maybe packed out an animal, or two
Mm-hmm.
mistakes of, maybe doing too much for the first time.
100%, dude. I think like I mean what I did is I remember I did an overnighter for the first time. I just like wanted to do that. And then what you can do is say you do have because maybe what this guy is, maybe he has 7 days to go hunting, right? Like that's his
Exactly.
that's his vacation time. So it's like, well, maybe a better thing to do is to like pack for 2 nights, maybe, and
Hmm.
go in for 2 nights, reassess. If you want to go back in, throw some more food in your backpack and go back in, right? Just to kind of break up the monotony. Cause I agree with you, man. Like staying in the backcountry I remember my first 8 to 10 day hunt, and I couldn't imagine doing that mentally for my first hunt.
Yeah.
I for sure would have came out early if I would have done that. Not everybody is created equally in that regard. Like some people are just tougher than others.
Well, and
But
strategically, Josh, just to highlight real quick what you said about
yeah,
I have 7 to 8 days to hunt. I may pack in 2 nights.
yeah,
We still do that all of the time. Like
same.
if I have, a week to hunt elk, it's rare anymore that I'm like packing up everything for a week and going full send into a spot. Just from a strategy perspective, it's more common for me to go. It depends on the area, how much intel I have, et cetera, et cetera. But it's
Hmm.
more common for me to go like at the truck judgment call based on conditions, based on what I'm seeing. Yeah, I'm gonna take 2 to 3 nights worth of stuff, like go hunt this country, either be into elk or not, and then either have killed something, have been on something, and I'm gonna play it smart and use those 2 to 3 days, hunt effectively. Worst case scenario, have to resupply and go back in there.
Right.
Or I went in here, man, I think I want to try and go find better hunting elsewhere and then just stay mobile and move quick. So I just wanted to highlight again, especially for beginners, it is not a beginner strategy to have 7 to 8 days of hunt and carry 2 to 3 days worth of gear. And
Hmm.
then, oh, all the real backpack hunters are taking everything for 7 to 8 days if they have it. That is not at all what either you or I are saying. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
want to make that super clear because it could be much more effective to hunt in these smaller chunks and into certain pockets for quicker times and stay mobile than it is to go full send and fully commit to 7 to 8 days worth of, effort and gear and everything into one spot.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, because on like, I mean, aside from like the mental side of things, Mark, you just never know what's going to happen too. Like, you might go into this area, and if you've never been in there, you might go in there and maybe the animals aren't there. So, like, to commit to, oh, I'm going to bring, 8 days of food in there. One, I mean, you're putting just more wear and tear on your body than you should be, you know? Um, to find out in 2 days that, oh wow, this area sucks. Like it's not what I thought. Or maybe you go in there and there's too many people, right? There's like so many people around. And can you make it work? Yeah, sure. If you want to be stubborn, you can just like, well, you know what? I'm gonna go further, and I'm gonna keep getting away from folks. But how I try to like to approach that stuff is like I try to go into a hunt and have several different backup options, just because I've run into all that. I've experienced too many people. I've experienced no animals. And I think there is something to be said, and some wisdom in, you know what? Let's commit 3 days to this. In 3 days, I can cover all this country. And if I don't find anything by then, I'm gonna back out and I'm gonna pack into a different spot, a couple miles down the road or whatever. I think that's a great play, man. Of course, intel plays a role, right? Like it depends, like what you were saying, like depends on how much intel you have on the area. And I think it also depends on your history in the area too. Like if you've hunted in there before and oh, I know that this basin has bucks. There's bucks in here every single year. That is more of a situation where I'm more apt to actually load up 8 days of food because I
Mm-hmm.
know the area very well. But in new spots, you just don't. You just never know, man.
Yep.
So I think it pays to sometimes be mobile.
So much in here, Josh. This is a great conversation. I think that will help folks. And we could go so much deeper on any of these given categories and points. And thankfully, between a lot of what you've put out, a lot of what we've put out through EXO, we do have a lot more resources that go deeper. So I'm going to leave a ton of links in the show description for listeners to go check out on, yeah, I mean, everything from the training, the nutrition, the mental, the gear, all that stuff. I'm going to leave a bunch of links, but before I let you go, where are all the places to go find Josh Kirchner?
Oh yeah. So if you just search Dialed In Hunter on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, that's me. If you want to go check out my books, you can go to Amazon, type in Becoming a Backpack Hunter or Becoming a Bow Hunter, and those will pop up. Feel free to message me on social media. I really, really try to get back to everyone. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but I love chatting with folks about this stuff. So that's how you find me.
Well, there you have it, guys. If you want to dive deeper and get those free resources, be sure to check out the link in the show description. You'll get gear lists, training plan, nutrition and food guides, a link to Josh's book and other resources, and a whole lot more. Also, in addition to the podcast, we send helpful information via email that could include videos, articles, exclusive announcements through EXO Mountain Gear. What we won't do is send you junk. But if you want to get signed up for that, go to exomountaingear.com/newsletter. You'll also be entered to win a K4 pack system of your choice. And the next drawing for that is in just a few days as this podcast is released. So be sure to go ahead and do that now if you're interested. Thanks as always for tuning in and for your support of the show. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback for us, send an email to podcast@exomountaingear.com. And be sure that you're also subscribed to the show in your podcast app. And we'll talk to you soon.